Emotional resonance is not something that can be manufactured with words or gestures alone. It is a subtle energy, a quiet frequency that exists in the spaces between speech, action, and thought. When a woman is aligned within herself, when her inner world is calm, aware, and intentional, she radiates a presence that is palpable to a man, even if he cannot immediately name what draws him in. Alignment is not perfection, nor is it an absence of emotion. It is the conscious mastery of her inner landscape. When she is grounded in her own rhythm, her own purpose, and her own emotional reality, it creates a vibration that a man instinctively senses, and this vibration awakens something deep within him. It is the silent language of trust, stability, and emotional safety that speaks louder than any words she could ever say. Inner alignment begins with awareness. A woman who is aware of her thoughts, her feelings, and her patterns does not allow external events to dictate her emotional state. She moves through the world with a quiet intelligence, observing the ripples of her own mind without being consumed by them. This awareness is magnetic because it signals to a man that she is not dependent on him to complete her, soothe her, or regulate her emotions. She is whole on her own, and her energy is available, not desperate, not anxious, not pleading. Emotional resonance thrives in presence, and presence can only exist when a woman is rooted within herself. A man senses this deeply, even subconsciously. He feels the difference between someone who is seeking him for validation and someone who exists fully in her own right, and the pull toward the latter is instinctive and undeniable. Calmness is the second pillar of inner alignment. When a woman can maintain emotional equilibrium, even in the face of challenges, she becomes a quiet center in the midst of chaos. A man unconsciously searches for stability, not just in her words or actions, but in the energy she emits. When she reacts with composure rather than impulse, with thoughtfulness rather than panic, it creates a resonance that is rare and deeply attractive. It is not about suppressing emotions, it is about mastering them so that they do not overwhelm or control her. Her calmness allows a man to relax into her presence, to open his own vulnerability without fear of judgment or emotional volatility. Emotional resonance is born in this space of safety, where feelings can flow naturally because they are reflected and mirrored, not distorted or demanded. Intentionality is the third, subtle yet powerful layer of alignment. A woman who knows what she wants, who understands her boundaries, and who moves with purpose creates an invisible gravity that draws a man inward. Alignment is not passive. It is an active expression of self-respect and clarity. When she chooses her energy, her attention, and her engagement deliberately, it signals to a man that he is encountering a life that is rich, meaningful, and independent. This does not mean she controls or manipulates. It means she navigates her inner and outer world with coherence and integrity. Emotional resonance is strongest when a woman's actions, energy, and words all come from a place of deliberate awareness rather than reaction. Her presence becomes a mirror of stability, and a man feels seen and understood on a level that goes beyond superficial connection. Authenticity is the heart of alignment. There is no resonance in pretense or performance. A man senses authenticity instantly because it carries an unspoken confidence and a clarity of being. When a woman is in alignment with her true self, her values, desires, and emotional truth, her energy becomes unmistakably real. She does not bend herself to meet his expectations or create a version of herself that she thinks will attract him. Instead, she stands fully in her own light, and the resonance that emerges from this authenticity calls a man toward depth. Authenticity is magnetic because it removes games, masks, and ambiguity, replacing them with honesty, presence, and clarity. In this space, emotional bonds form effortlessly because they are built on the unshakable foundation of being known for who she truly is, not who she appears to be. Even the subtle patterns of energy, posture, and tone contribute to emotional resonance. When a woman is aligned, her body language, her voice, and her movements all reflect her inner state. There is a softness in her gaze, a steadiness in her posture, a warmth in her tone that signals calm, strength, and openness. These signals are registered at a level beyond conscious thought. They communicate without speaking, creating a resonance that penetrates the mind and touches the heart. A man may not be able to explain why he feels drawn, but he recognizes the energy as safe, attractive, and compelling. Alignment becomes a silent conversation, an unspoken communication of wholeness and presence that draws him closer while allowing freedom. Finally, the depth of emotional resonance grows over time because alignment is consistent. It is not a performance for moments of intimacy, but a continuous state of being. When a woman consistently operates from inner alignment, it forms a rhythm that a man comes to rely on, appreciate, and invest in. It creates a trust that is more profound than words, connection that is experienced rather than argued. Alignment transforms attraction into devotion, interest into care, and casual presence into meaningful emotional investment. A man is drawn not to perfection, nor to frantic energy, but to the quiet, steady, fully embodied presence of a woman who has cultivated her inner world. He resonates with her because she has mastered herself enough to be free of dependence, free of neediness, and free of reactive emotion. He senses the space she creates, the intentionality she carries, and the authenticity that radiates, and he cannot help but be drawn into that resonance, feeling a bond that goes beyond the superficial, reaching into the depth of his own heart and emotions. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is the unspoken language of presence, the invisible current that carries meaning deeper than words ever could. When a woman understands the power of her own quiet, she discovers an influence that moves without effort and bonds without force. Men are drawn to silence because it allows them to encounter the authentic, unguarded energy of a woman without distraction. Words can be persuasive, clever, or alluring, but silence communicates a kind of truth that cannot be manufactured. It is an invitation to experience her essence directly, a space where a man is not just hearing her, but feeling her. The quiet becomes magnetic because it reflects depth, stability, and a confidence that does not need to declare itself, a strength that simply exists and commands attention in its stillness. Silence is also the canvas upon which presence is painted. When a woman allows quiet moments to exist, she demonstrates that her energy is not dependent on constant validation or explanation. She does not need to fill every pause with chatter, nor does she need to justify her value with words. This lack of neediness creates an unspoken freedom, and a man senses this immediately. He feels the space around her as safe and expansive, and in that space, emotional connection deepens effortlessly. The absence of words does not signify absence of interest. Rather, it signifies an awareness of the power inherent in the unspoken. When a woman does not seek to control the conversation or the emotional experience through speech, she allows the energy between them to flow naturally, giving a man the opportunity to respond from his own inner place, rather than from obligation or expectation. There is also a profound intimacy in silence that cannot be replicated through dialogue. Words often carry interpretations, assumptions, and hidden agendas, while silence communicates authenticity and presence. A shared quiet between a man and a woman becomes a sacred rhythm, a private language of understanding that transcends rational thought. It allows emotions to surface without fear of judgment, and it invites reflection on both sides. In these quiet moments, a man begins to notice subtleties, the curve of a smile, the warmth in a gaze, the steadiness of posture that words alone could never convey. He experiences her essence directly, and in that experience, emotional resonance is formed and strengthened. Silence is not passive, it is active presence, the kind that requires mastery and awareness because it is easy to fill the space with unnecessary noise. True silence, when chosen intentionally, becomes a bridge to connection rather than a gap to fill. The power of silence also lies in its ability to create curiosity and anticipation. When a woman does not explain everything, does not share all her thoughts at once, and does not chase understanding or affirmation, a man becomes naturally drawn to her. He wants to know more, not out of manipulation, but out of genuine interest and the magnetic pull of her inner depth. Silence cultivates mystery, and mystery is the fertile ground where emotional investment takes root. A man feels challenged in the most subtle and natural way because he is invited to engage beyond superficiality, to explore and earn understanding rather than being handed it. In this process, emotional bonds deepen because they are chosen consciously, nurtured through observation, reflection, and presence rather than manufactured by words or actions alone. Silence also provides the environment for non-verbal communication, which is often more powerful than speech. The tilt of her head, the softness in her eyes, the rhythm of her breathing, the way she carries herself, these become expressions of her emotional reality when words are absent. A man learns to read her energy intuitively, and in doing so, he engages on a deeper level than any verbal explanation could achieve. Silence amplifies subtle cues, heightens awareness, and fosters an emotional intimacy that is both profound and enduring. He begins to sense her boundaries, her comfort, her desires, and her unspoken invitations. And this recognition strengthens attachment because it requires presence and attentiveness, qualities that nurture a lasting emotional bond. Furthermore, silence is an act of self-mastery. A woman who can remain quiet not out of fear or insecurity, but out of choice and awareness, demonstrates control over her own energy. She is not reactive, she is not compelled to fill empty spaces, and she does not compromise her inner peace to satisfy external expectations. This mastery is inherently attractive because it signals to a man that she is whole, independent, and grounded. Emotional resonance arises not from the quantity of words spoken, but from the quality of the energy she projects. Her quiet conveys confidence, composure, and self-possession, all of which draw a man in and encourage him to open himself in return. In the absence of constant verbal expression, the space she creates allows him to feel, reflect, and connect with her on a level that transcends ordinary interaction. Silence also holds the power to heal, to reflect, and to teach. When a woman offers quiet presence, a man is often able to confront his own emotions without distraction. He is invited to feel without having to explain, to process without interruption, and to observe without judgment. This creates a unique emotional intimacy because it acknowledges the unspoken, the subtle, and the often overlooked dimensions of human connection. He learns that emotional bonds are not forged solely through dialogue or action, but through the shared experience of being fully present, aware, and attuned to one another. The quiet space becomes a sanctuary where emotional resonance can flourish naturally and without effort, and he begins to associate her presence with comfort, depth, and meaningful connection. Boundaries are not walls, they are the invisible architecture of self-respect, the quiet declaration of a woman's integrity and inner strength. A woman who knows where she begins and ends, who honors her own energy and space, creates an undeniable magnetism. Boundaries cultivate desire because they signal that she is whole, independent, and intentional, that she does not exist merely to please, chase, or accommodate another person. A man feels this immediately, even if he cannot articulate why. He senses the clarity and integrity of her energy, and it awakens in him a natural impulse to invest, to lean in, to understand, and to earn the connection she freely chooses to offer. Boundaries are not a means of manipulation, they are a reflection of self-awareness and authenticity, and when expressed with calm confidence, they draw a man closer rather than push him away. The first layer of boundaries is clarity of self. A woman who is aligned knows what she values, what she desires, and what she will no longer tolerate. This clarity acts as a beacon, guiding a man toward a meaningful connection while simultaneously filtering out those who are misaligned with her energy. When a woman communicates her limits gently but firmly, she establishes a rhythm of respect in the interaction. A man feels the weight of this unspoken standard, and it encourages him to rise to it. Desire is not cultivated through need or compromise. It grows in the fertile space where a man is invited to meet her energy on equal footing. Boundaries define the perimeter of her presence, not as a cage, but as a framework for mutual respect, admiration, and emotional investment. Boundaries also create the space for mystery and longing. A woman who is always available, who gives her time, attention, and energy without discernment, often leaves little room for emotional curiosity. Desire thrives in the space between availability and absence, in the subtle tension created when a man feels he must engage with intentionality to experience her fully. When she protects her energy, prioritizes her life, and does not surrender it automatically, he is drawn in. He is compelled to observe, anticipate, and invest because he senses that her attention is not guaranteed, that it is something to earn and cherish. In this space, emotional bonds deepen naturally because they are not formed out of convenience or need, but out of genuine effort and alignment with her energy. Boundaries in their quiet strength cultivate longing, investment, and attachment simultaneously. Consistency is another crucial element. A woman who consistently maintains her boundaries, not as a performance but as a reflection of her inner integrity, creates predictability and trust. A man learns to navigate her energy, to understand her rhythms, and to appreciate the stability she offers. Boundaries are effective not only because they define what is acceptable, but because they are consistently upheld. Emotional resonance grows when a man sees that her standards are not flexible for the sake of his approval, but are rooted in self-respect. This consistency communicates strength, composure, and clarity, all of which are magnetic qualities. It also allows him to engage from a place of choice rather than pressure, deepening desire because connection is experienced as a mutual and conscious investment rather than a default expectation. Boundaries also serve as a mirror of self-mastery. A woman who knows her limits and enforces them demonstrates that she is attuned to her own needs, emotions, and energy. She does not allow external forces, including a man's attention or approval, to dictate her emotional state. This mastery is profoundly attractive because it signals that she is emotionally sovereign, that she can love, care, and engage without losing herself in the process. Desire grows naturally when a man senses that she is not reliant on him for validation, that her energy is complete on its own, and that his presence is welcomed rather than demanded. Boundaries cultivate the sense that connection is a privilege, a choice, and an honor, which ignites deeper emotional investment and attachment. Non-negotiable boundaries, expressed calmly and confidently, also create a sense of safety. A man experiences her clarity as an invisible container in which he can express himself, explore emotions, and reveal vulnerability without fear of being met with chaos or instability. This safety is irresistible because it allows intimacy to flourish without the complications of emotional neediness or unpredictability. Boundaries, in this sense, are not restrictions. They are the framework in which desire can thrive freely and authentically. He feels the pull of her energy because it is consistent, respectful, and purposeful, and he begins to associate her presence with stability, attraction, and meaningful connection. Finally, boundaries cultivate respect and admiration, which are the twin pillars of desire. When a woman demonstrates that she values her own energy and life, a man instinctively values it as well. He becomes drawn to the strength, the independence, and the clarity she radiates. The desire that arises from this respect is not superficial or fleeting. It is rooted in emotional alignment and mutual recognition. A man does not seek to possess or control her. He seeks to understand, to contribute, and to earn her presence in a way that feels aligned with her energy. Desire, in its purest form, emerges from the conscious balance of space and engagement, freedom and connection, choice and attention, all of which are created and maintained by the careful cultivation of boundaries. In every interaction, every gesture, every silent moment, the presence of clear, firm, and consistent boundaries becomes a force that draws him closer, nurtures attachment, and awakens a deeper, more enduring emotional investment. Non-reactivity is a quiet force that transforms relationships in ways that words and actions alone often cannot. It is the ability to remain centered, composed, and steady regardless of the circumstances, the emotional turbulence around her, or the impulses of others. When a woman embodies non-reactivity, she creates an environment where a man can feel truly seen, heard, and safe to experience his emotions without fear of judgment, criticism, or emotional escalation. Emotional attachment is amplified not by control or persuasion, but by the calm presence of someone who has mastered herself enough to remain unmoved by chaos and drama. A man senses this energy instinctively. He feels the freedom to be himself, to explore his feelings, and to reveal vulnerability because her stability creates a magnetic, non-threatening container for intimacy to grow. Non-reactivity begins with awareness of one's own triggers. A woman who is emotionally aligned knows when something is an external provocation and when it is a reflection of her inner state. She observes without immediately responding. She reflects without immediately judging, and she chooses her actions deliberately rather than instinctively. This mastery communicates to a man that her presence is safe, consistent, and intentional. He feels a deep respect for this energy because it signals strength, maturity, and self-possession. Non-reactivity is not indifference. It is the conscious choice to respond from a place of centeredness rather than instinctual reaction. Emotional resonance grows in this space because a man experiences her as someone whose energy is stable, reliable, and emotionally coherent, and in that reliability, he feels compelled to invest, connect, and open fully. Patience is an essential component of non-reactivity. A woman who does not demand immediate resolution, validation, or attention allows a man to engage at his own pace. She does not chase, argue, or over-explain when he withdraws or expresses hesitation. Instead, she holds her center, remaining calm and present, which paradoxically draws him in more deeply than any pursuit could. Non-reactivity transforms the dynamic of desire because it shifts the energy from neediness to choice. A man feels the pull of her energy because he is allowed the space to approach her naturally, to engage without pressure, and to invest emotionally because it is safe, welcome, and reciprocated with awareness rather than compulsion. The absence of reaction becomes a magnet, a subtle force that encourages him to connect without coercion. Another powerful aspect of non-reactivity is the mirror it holds for a man's own emotions. When a woman remains steady in the face of his moods, frustrations, or anxieties, she reflects a sense of calm that encourages him to mirror it back. Her composed energy models emotional regulation, showing him that he can lower defenses, explore vulnerability, and express feelings without triggering conflict or chaos. Emotional attachment deepens in this environment because it is rooted in trust, safety, and the unspoken assurance that he will not be consumed or judged for his emotional expression. Non-reactivity fosters an unspoken dialogue of stability and understanding, where the connection is nurtured through energy rather than argument, through presence rather than persuasion. Non-reactivity also strengthens desire by creating space for curiosity and investment. A woman who does not react impulsively to every action or word allows a man to engage in a deeper, more intentional way. He is compelled to invest emotionally, to think, to feel, and to navigate the dynamic with mindfulness because he senses that the connection is not automatic or transactional. Emotional bonds flourish in this environment because attachment is formed through conscious engagement rather than reactive compliance. The energy of non-reactivity communicates subtle power and autonomy, and a man instinctively recognizes that emotional intimacy in this context is earned, valued, and meaningful. Consistency amplifies the effect of non-reactivity. When a woman repeatedly demonstrates emotional composure, he begins to anticipate it, to rely on it, and to value it as a stabilizing force in his life. Her steadiness becomes a foundation upon which trust and attachment are built, unlike volatility or unpredictability, which create tension, confusion, or anxiety. Non-reactivity produces a rhythm that a man can feel and internalize. He begins to align his own emotional responses with her calm energy, deepening the sense of connection. Desire grows not from fleeting excitement or dramatic moments, but from the profound comfort, safety, and respect created by consistent, centered presence. Non-reactivity also communicates dignity and self-respect. A woman who does not overact, argue unnecessarily, or seek validation signals that she values herself and her energy above external drama or instability. This invisible code of integrity resonates deeply with a man. He senses that she is whole, autonomous, and composed, and he feels a natural attraction to someone whose energy is not contingent on his behavior or approval. Emotional attachment is enhanced because the bond forms in a space of mutual respect and recognition, rather than need or coercion. He desires her presence because it represents something rare: strength without aggression, calm without detachment, and intimacy without dependency. Finally, non-reactivity fosters depth and longevity in connection. Emotional attachment that grows in response to composure, patience, and awareness is not fleeting or superficial. It is cultivated through the unspoken understanding that she is steady, reliable, and intentionally engaged. A man learns that his emotions can be experienced freely, that connection does not require him to perform or chase, and that the intimacy between them is nurtured through conscious presence rather than reaction. Non-reactivity transforms ordinary interaction into profound resonance, allowing attachment to flourish naturally, magnetically, and with a depth that surpasses the surface of words or gestures. Consistency is one of the most subtle yet powerful forces in cultivating emotional attachment. It is the quiet rhythm that communicates reliability, integrity, and stability without ever needing to be declared. A woman who embodies consistency demonstrates through her actions, her presence, and her energy that she is someone a man can trust, someone whose emotional landscape is dependable and whose intentions are aligned with her character. Trust is rarely built in a single grand gesture. It is cultivated in the repetition of small, deliberate acts, the steady unfolding of energy that reassures a man over time. When a woman consistently demonstrates awareness, calmness, and self-possession, a man begins to sense the depth of her presence, and in this recognition, emotional attachment naturally deepens. Consistency is reflected in her energy first and foremost. A woman who remains steady across different moments, moods, And circumstances conveys a sense of inner mastery. She does not fluctuate wildly with external events, the behavior of others, or transient emotions. This steadiness creates a predictable and safe environment for a man to exist within, and he responds to this predictability with trust. He begins to rely on her presence as a stabilizing force, a constant in a world that is often chaotic and unpredictable. Emotional bonds grow stronger because he is able to align his own energy with hers without fear of sudden instability or emotional volatility. The more consistent her energy, the more he feels understood, seen, and safe, and the stronger the emotional resonance becomes. Words alone cannot build attachment. Consistency is revealed in the alignment of words and actions over time. A woman who follows through on what she says, honors her promises, and acts in accordance with her stated values demonstrates integrity. A man feels this alignment intuitively. He senses when someone's energy is congruent, when their presence is trustworthy, and when their intentions are clear. In contrast, inconsistency breeds confusion, doubt, and emotional distance. Emotional attachment thrives in an environment where actions match words and presence matches intention. When a woman consistently embodies her principles, boundaries, and composure, she cultivates a sense of reliability that becomes irresistible. Trust is formed not in a single moment, but in the repeated reinforcement of her authentic, grounded energy. Consistency also creates a rhythm that deepens intimacy. A man begins to recognize patterns in her behavior, in her communication, and in her emotional presence, and this predictability allows him to relax, open, and invest. He feels that he can engage without fear of misunderstanding, rejection, or sudden shifts in energy. Emotional connection grows because the bond is anchored in experience rather than assumption. Each repeated act of steadiness reinforces his sense that he is interacting with someone authentic, reliable, and emotionally intelligent. Over time, this rhythm becomes a foundation for trust that is resilient, enduring, and profoundly attractive. A man is drawn not merely to her beauty or charm, but to the continuity of her energy, the quiet power of her reliability, and the depth that emerges from consistent alignment between her inner and outer world. The depth that consistency creates is also relational. It allows a man to reveal himself gradually, to explore vulnerability, and to engage in authentic emotional exchange without fear of instability. When a woman remains consistent in her presence and energy, she communicates silently that he is safe to invest emotionally, that the space between them is secure, and that connection is not fleeting or conditional. Emotional attachment grows because he experiences her as a stable force, someone whose energy he can rely on to be steady, compassionate, and aware. This creates a sense of intimacy that is not rushed or forced, but naturally cultivated over time through repeated, deliberate presence. Consistency also reflects a mastery of self which is deeply attractive. A woman who can maintain her energy, boundaries, and emotional center across time demonstrates that she is not easily swayed by external circumstances, drama, or fleeting impulses. This mastery signals to a man that she is grounded, autonomous, and whole. He senses that her presence is not contingent on his behavior or approval, and this recognition strengthens desire and attachment. Emotional resonance grows in the rhythm of her consistency because he feels he is encountering someone who is self-possessed, intentional, and emotionally sovereign. It is in the quiet constancy of her energy that he discovers a profound sense of trust and emotional alignment. The small, repeated gestures of consistency, gentle attentiveness, thoughtful communication, calm responsiveness, respect for boundaries, build a cumulative effect that is far more powerful than any grand declaration. Over time, these consistent acts create a pattern of reliability that signals to a man that she is someone worth investing in emotionally. Trust is nurtured in these moments, and emotional attachment deepens because he experiences a connection that is predictable in its stability yet alive in its authenticity. The rhythm of her consistency becomes a sanctuary, a space where he can open fully, express vulnerability, and engage with her presence on a profound level. Finally, consistency fosters patience and understanding. A man senses that he is interacting with someone who will not overreact to mistakes, fluctuations, or challenges, and this allows him to invest without fear of abrupt judgment or instability. Emotional attachment grows in this environment because he experiences connection as reliable, safe, and grounded. The depth that emerges from consistency is not superficial, it is woven into the fabric of repeated, deliberate presence, creating a bond that is resilient, magnetic, and enduring. Mystery is not about hiding who you are. It is about the depth of self that cannot be fully known in a single encounter. A woman who embodies mystery carries an energy that is intriguing, magnetic, and irresistible because she is not fully predictable, not entirely consumed by external validation, and not completely revealed at once. Mystery creates space for curiosity, imagination, and emotional investment. When a man senses that there is more to discover, that the woman before him is rich with thoughts, experiences, and emotions that he cannot immediately grasp, he is drawn inward. He feels compelled to explore, to understand, and to engage with her on a deeper level, not out of manipulation, but because her presence invites authentic attention and engagement. Mystery, when coupled with self-mastery, becomes a quiet force that naturally cultivates attachment, desire, and emotional resonance. Self-mastery is the foundation upon which mystery becomes magnetic. A woman who has cultivated her own energy, emotions, and boundaries carries an invisible strength that signals stability and depth. She is not reactive, not driven by external approval, and not swayed by fleeting attention. Instead, she moves through life with intentionality and awareness, and her energy reflects an inner coherence that is rare and compelling. When a man encounters a woman with self-mastery, he senses that she is whole, independent, and emotionally sovereign. This recognition sparks a deep sense of respect, admiration, and curiosity. He becomes invested not because he seeks to control or possess, but because he feels that the connection is a privilege, an opportunity to engage with someone of substance and integrity. Mystery and self-mastery together create a magnetic tension. She is fully present, yet not fully known, fully available, yet not dependent, fully authentic, yet subtly untouchable. And this dynamic naturally draws a man to invest emotionally. Mystery encourages patience and attentiveness. A man who senses that a woman is not fully revealed at once begins to observe, reflect, and tune into the subtleties of her energy. He learns to listen not just to her words, but to her presence, her gestures, her tone, and the rhythm of her attention. This attentiveness deepens emotional connection because it requires conscious engagement. He is not passively entertained or pursued. He is invited to participate in a dynamic that is rich, nuanced, and layered. Emotional investment grows because he experiences the unfolding of her energy as a journey, one that is worth time, attention, and intention. Mystery transforms ordinary interactions into meaningful experiences, and self-mastery ensures that these interactions are grounded, consistent, and emotionally safe. A woman's self-mastery amplifies the effect of mystery because it communicates confidence and autonomy. She does not feel compelled to reveal everything to secure a man's attention or affection. Her energy is complete on its own, and her presence is offered as a gift rather than a demand. This creates a magnetic dynamic in which a man must choose to engage, invest, and understand her on her terms. The energy of self-mastery communicates, without words, that emotional connection is something to be cultivated rather than assumed, that her attention is earned rather than given indiscriminately. Mystery, then, is not manipulation. It is the natural consequence of a woman's completeness, her awareness, and her conscious engagement with life and relationships. The interplay of mystery and self-mastery also fosters emotional depth. When a man senses that a woman carries layers of thought, emotion, and intention that he has yet to fully uncover, he is drawn to explore and engage more meaningfully. He invests in her presence because he perceives it as rich, unique, and aligned with authenticity. Emotional attachment is strengthened in this dynamic because the connection is based not on superficial excitement, need, or immediate gratification, but on the ongoing process of discovery, reflection, and resonance. Mystery creates the space, and self-mastery ensures the integrity of that space, allowing him to feel the value of his own investment as he gradually uncovers her depth. Mystery also cultivates respect and admiration. A woman who is self-mastered does not overshare or allow herself to be consumed by external validation. She creates a sense of intrigue by living fully in her own world, pursuing her passions, honoring her boundaries, and carrying herself with calm intentionality. A man observes this energy and recognizes its rarity and authenticity. He feels drawn to engage with her because she embodies qualities that cannot be replicated, forced, or easily attained. Emotional attachment grows because he experiences the process of discovery as rewarding, meaningful, and worthy of his time, energy, and attention. The combination of mystery and self-mastery ensures that connection is earned through engagement and alignment rather than demanded through presence alone. Even in silence, mystery communicates volumes. The woman who does not rush to fill every space with words, explanations, or gestures allows her energy to speak through nuance, presence, and intention. A man begins to read her subtleties, to notice the unspoken, and to interpret her rhythm. This deepens his emotional investment because he is participating in a dynamic that is active rather than passive, conscious rather than automatic. Mystery paired with self-mastery transforms simple moments into profound opportunities for emotional resonance, creating bonds that are deep, magnetic, and enduring. Finally, mystery and self-mastery together foster an environment in which a man can invest freely and consciously. He feels invited rather than coerced, challenged rather than controlled, valued rather than taken for granted. Emotional attachment flourishes in this space because it is nurtured through the subtle interplay of presence, depth, and autonomy. The magnetic tension of what is revealed and what remains hidden encourages him to lean in, to observe, to reflect, and to contribute emotionally. Desire, trust, and investment are cultivated naturally, effortlessly, and sustainably through the quiet power of a woman who embodies both mystery and self-mastery,